She was always the one people turned to in moments of fear, chaos, and uncertainty. When things began to fall apart, her name was the first one they called. Not because she had all the answers, but because she made others feel safe, as if nothing could touch them when she was around. She stood tall when others fell. She stayed calm when others panicked. She gave strength, even when she had none left for herself. In every room, she was the shield. She absorbed what others couldn't handle, the heartbreak, the stress, the pressure, and she did it without complaint. But no one stopped to ask what that weight was doing to her. Because when you're strong all the time, people forget you're human. They start to believe your silence means you're fine. They see your composure and think you don't feel pain. They mistake your patience for peace. And slowly, the very people she protected began to expect it of her, not out of malice, but because they didn't see the cracks forming beneath the surface. They couldn't imagine that someone who holds everything together might be falling apart inside. She became the backbone of her family, the quiet leader in her relationships, the unshakable one at work, and the emotional anchor for friends. And she didn't resist that role, not at first. In some ways, it gave her purpose. There's a quiet pride in knowing that others can stand because you didn't fall. But with every burden she took on, she gave away a piece of herself, her rest, her voice, her softness, her tears. All traded for strength she never got to set down, and the truth is, no one asked her to carry it all. But no one stopped her either, because people don't question the strength that makes their lives easier. They don't look twice at the person who holds it all together until that person disappears. Until one day, the shield that once stood so tall is nowhere to be found, and they wonder how they missed the signs. How they didn't see the tired eyes behind the bright smile. How they didn't hear the silence that wasn't peaceful, but screaming for help. But by then it's too late. You see, the strongest people are often the loneliest, not because they don't have others around them, but because they don't feel safe putting the weight down. They're terrified that if they stop being the shield, everything around them will collapse, that if they show their pain, others will panic. And so they keep going day after day, wound after wound, hiding behind strength because it's the only way they know how to survive. She didn't become the shield because she wanted to be invincible. She became it because life gave her no choice. Somewhere along the way, she learned that being vulnerable got you hurt, that asking for help made you weak, that showing emotion gave others the power to break you. So she built her armor. She learned to smile while bleeding. She learned to hold others even when she felt like she was drowning. But strength doesn't mean the absence of pain. And silence isn't the absence of wounds. Some scars are just, hidden. Some tears are cried behind closed doors. Some battles are fought in the middle of the night when the world is asleep, and that's where her story was written. Not in the spotlight, not in praise, but in the quiet moments where no one saw how much it cost her to keep going. She was the shield, but no one saw her scars, and maybe it's time we start looking closer. There's an unspoken weight that comes with always being seen as the strong one. It sounds like a compliment, a badge of honor. People admire your composure, your courage, your ability to stay calm when everything else is falling apart. But what they don't realize is that strength, when constantly demanded, turns into a burden, and she carried that burden every single day. She didn't choose to be the strong one. Life taught her to be. Every time she cried and no one listened, every time she broke down and was told to pull herself together, every time she asked for support and was met with silence, life carved the lesson deeper into her. Be strong, don't feel, don't fall. So she adapted. She became what the world needed her to be, reliable, unshaken, always in control. People started coming to her for help, advice, a listening ear. She gave what she could and then gave even more. Not because she had extra to offer, but because she didn't know how to say, "I'm not okay." Because somewhere along the way, she was taught that her pain wasn't valid unless someone else approved of it. That unless it was visible, loud, and undeniable, it didn't count. So she tucked it away, her tiredness, her sadness, her fear. She buried it beneath layers of smiles and solutions, and no one noticed because she didn't let them. And that's the tragedy. When you always show up strong, people stop checking if you're okay. They don't ask how you're doing. They assume. They assume you've figured it out. They assume you're unaffected. They assume your silence is confidence, not exhaustion. And slowly, without meaning to, they begin to take your strength for granted. She became the emotional backbone for everyone around her. Always giving, always carrying, always present. But when it was her turn, when she needed someone to notice that her voice had grown quieter, that her eyes looked emptier, that she wasn't sleeping or eating or breathing the way she used to, no one saw, because the world doesn't stop for the strong. It leans harder on them. She kept showing up because she thought she had to. She thought strength meant pushing through no matter what. She thought crying would make her look weak. She thought resting would make her seem lazy. She thought saying, "I can't," would make people leave. So she wore the mask. She told herself, just one more day, just keep going, until just one more day turned into months. And months turned into years, and suddenly she didn't recognize herself anymore. And here's the painful truth. The strongest people often feel the most alone. Not because no one loves them, but because they've been placed so high on a pedestal that no one sees their humanity anymore. People don't think to check on the person who's always checking on them. They don't reach out to the one who has it all together. They forget that even the strongest hearts can break. Even the brightest souls can dim. She never wanted to be a hero. She just didn't want to be a burden. And in avoiding that, she became invisible. The pressure to always be strong is a silent kind of suffering. It doesn't scream. It whispers in sleepless nights, in tired smiles, in long sighs when no one's watching. It shows up in the way she hesitates before answering "I'm fine," hoping someone might ask again. It hides in the moments she wishes someone, anyone, would just say, "You don't have to carry it all." She gave her strength freely, beautifully, but she needed to know that she was allowed to be weak sometimes too. That she didn't have to be the rock every single day. That she deserved softness, safety, and rest, not just responsibility. Because strength isn't about pretending. It's not about hiding your pain or pushing past your limits. Real strength is found in truth, in being seen fully, scars and all, and she deserved that truth. She was the strong one. But no one ever asked what it was costing her. Every time she entered a room, she brought light. She carried herself with grace, with warmth, with the kind of calm that made others breathe easier just by being near her. But what they didn't know, what they never saw, was how much effort it took just to appear that way. Because behind that effortless strength was a woman silently bleeding. Behind that steady voice was someone who hadn't been heard in a long time. Behind every smile she gave the world was a pain she kept buried so deep. Even she had forgotten how long it had been there. They say the eyes are the window to the soul, but only if someone dares to look closely. No one ever did. Because when someone plays the role of strong for too long, people forget to look beyond the surface. They stop wondering what that smile might be hiding, and so she learned how to wear it like armor, perfectly placed, impeccably timed, no cracks, no tears, no slips. She knew how to show up for others. She knew how to nod and say, "I'm okay," even when she wasn't. She knew how to ask others how they were doing and make them feel safe. heard, and loved. She was the one who noticed when someone else went quiet, when someone else withdrew. She could feel other people's pain, even when they didn't speak a word of it, but no one ever mirrored that back to her. No one asked the questions she so freely asked others. No one noticed when her answers grew shorter, when her laugh became softer, when her eyes lost their light, because she was too good at hiding, and she had to be. Vulnerability never felt like an option. There was a time when she tried, when she opened up, just a little, to see what would happen. But people weren't ready to hold her truth. They looked uncomfortable, changed the subject, or told her to be grateful. So she learned that showing pain only made others uncomfortable, and she hated making people uncomfortable. So she stopped. She stitched her own wounds, sat in her own darkness, and somehow managed to keep shining for others. But the price of that is heavy. It's the kind of tired that sleep can't fix, the kind of silence that rings in your ears, the kind of ache that builds in your chest because you carry so much and no one knows. She became the kind of woman people admire but don't truly see. They praise her resilience, her work ethic, her grace under pressure, never realizing those very things were built from pain. From being forced to grow up too soon, from being hurt one too many times, from always having to be okay, even when she wasn't. Her strength wasn't natural, it was survival. It was the result of being left to figure it out on her own, again and again. And still she loved, still she gave, still she showed up, but the truth is, no one can carry invisible wounds forever. No one can bleed silently for years without something inside them breaking. It's not weakness to feel. It's not weakness to be tired. It's not weakness to want someone to see you, really see you, and not just the version of you they find comforting. She didn't need a fixer. She didn't need advice. She needed someone to notice, to say, you don't always have to be strong here. She needed a space where she could be soft, messy, undone, and still be loved. But no one saw her scars. Because they didn't look, because she didn't show them, because somewhere along the line she was taught that strength meant hiding everything that hurt. And so she smiled, she listened, she gave, even when no one gave back. She didn't speak of her pain not because it wasn't there, but because experience had taught her to stay silent. Over time, she learned that not every space is safe, not every person can be trusted, and not every truth deserves to be spoken aloud. So she became quiet, not absent, not cold, just cautious. Her silence wasn't weakness, it was survival. It was the shield she used when the world felt too sharp, too loud, too careless with the hearts of people like her. She had once tried to be open. In moments of vulnerability, she had let her guard down. She shared pieces of her story, her struggles, the emotions that weighed heavy on her chest. But too often, those moments were met with judgment, minimization, or discomfort. People didn't know what to do with her honesty. They told her she was too emotional, too sensitive, too much. Or worse, they used her truth against her later, as if her softness was ammunition. So she stopped. She began to hold everything in, every ache, every fear, every disappointment, not because she wanted to, but because she had to. Because being vulnerable in a world that doesn't understand vulnerability is dangerous. Because every time she opened herself up, it left a scar. And eventually, those scars became too many to count. Still, she didn't stop showing up. She didn't stop loving, helping, or giving. She just became more careful with where she placed her heart. She wrapped her wounds in silence. She learned to heal in private, to cry when no one was around, to walk through her pain without leaving traces. Because in her world, being seen too deeply was a risk she could no longer afford. People saw her quietness and thought she was fine. They mistook her calm for contentment. they didn't realize that behind her composed expression was a storm she had mastered keeping still. She wasn't emotionless. She was just tired of explaining emotions to people who weren't listening. She wasn't cold. She just didn't want to be burned again. The hardest part of carrying silent pain is that no one offers help you haven't asked for. They don't know what you're holding because you've learned to hold it so well. You've become the master of hiding in plain sight, showing up, smiling, performing strength. And no one ever asks what it's costing you. She didn't speak, not because she didn't trust others at all, but because she had learned the value of protecting herself. When the world teaches you to be guarded, self-protection becomes a habit, one that's hard to unlearn. Her silence wasn't a wall built out of arrogance. It was built from disappointment, from betrayal, from being told too many times that her truth was too heavy to carry. And yet, beneath that silence was someone who longed to be understood, who hoped deep down that someone would see past the quiet, that someone would notice her hesitations, the way her smile didn't quite reach her eyes, the way her answers were always just enough to move the conversation forward, but never enough to let someone in. She didn't want to be silent. She wanted to be safe. She wanted to speak freely without being dismissed, to be heard without being fixed, to be held without being judged. She wanted someone to sit beside her pain without trying to make it disappear, someone who would say, "You don't have to explain, I'm here." But life had taught her not to expect that. So she poured her energy into being the listener, the helper, the one others leaned on. She gave people what she so desperately needed, hoping, perhaps, that by being that person for others, someone might finally be that person for her. And in the meantime, she survived in silence. She kept walking with wounds that never fully closed, hiding her hurt beneath a quiet strength most people mistook for peace. She didn't speak of her scars, not because they didn't hurt, but because she didn't know if the world would treat them with care. She carried so much for so long that it started to feel normal. Being the one who held everything together wasn't just something she did. It became who she was. The protector, the problem solver, the one who stayed calm when everyone else lost control. She didn't ask for that role, but once she stepped into it, it never left her. People leaned on her because she never gave them a reason to doubt her strength, and over time they forgot she was human. But even the strongest can't keep standing forever. What no one tells you is that being the shield comes with a quiet kind of weariness, the kind that doesn't show up in broken bones or bruises, but in the way someone sighs when the door finally closes behind them, in the way she lays in bed at night, staring at the ceiling, wondering how much longer she can carry all of this, in the way her hands shake when she pours her morning coffee, but she tells herself it's just because she didn't sleep enough. She convinced herself for so long that she was supposed to be unbreakable, that others needed her strength more than she needed her rest, that if she dropped the weight even for a moment, the world around her would collapse, so she kept going. Even when her heart felt heavy, even when her mind screamed for a pause, even when her body was begging her to stop. But no one can be the shield forever. The cracks started small, forgetting things she never used to forget, feeling disconnected from the people she loved, laughing less, smiling but not meaning it. She told herself it was just a rough patch, that she'd bounce back like always. But this time felt different. Her strength didn't feel like power anymore. It felt like armor that was crushing her from the inside. Still, she said nothing. Still, she showed up, because it felt safer to keep pretending than to risk disappointing the people who counted on her. She had been strong for so long that even she didn't know how to be anything else. But strength without rest is not strength. It's slow destruction. She started to realize that the same people who depended on her rarely stopped to ask how she was doing. And even when they did, It felt like they didn't really want to hear the truth. They were so used to her being okay that anything less felt uncomfortable. So she smiled and said she was fine, even when she wasn't. Because the moment she admitted she was struggling, everything would shift, and she wasn't sure anyone would know how to handle it. She wasn't looking for someone to fix her. She just wanted to know that it was okay to fall sometimes. That being tired didn't make her weak. That being the shield didn't mean she had to be indestructible. She wanted to be held, to be seen, to be told, "You can put it down now. You've done enough." Because she had. She had carried more than most people will ever understand. She had been the safe place for others while walking through storms of her own. She had held people together while silently falling apart. She had smiled through pain, laughed through exhaustion, and kept giving when she had nothing left inside. But even the shield deserves to rest. Even the strongest need a place to fall. And sometimes the greatest strength is in finally saying, "I can't do this alone anymore." She wasn't weak for needing rest. She was human, and there is nothing shameful about that. She was the shield. But shields weren't made to carry the weight forever. They were made to protect, and even protection has its limits. This is for every woman who carried the weight of the world while making it look effortless. For every woman who stayed strong for others when she had no one to be strong for her. For every woman who dried her own tears in the silence of her room so she could be the smile everyone needed the next morning. This is for her, the one who was the shield. You see, she didn't ask for applause. She didn't ask to be admired. All she ever wanted was to feel safe, to feel seen, to feel like she didn't have to carry everything alone. But the world has a way of romanticizing strength and ignoring the pain behind it. People praised her resilience, but no one asked what it cost her. They leaned on her, but never noticed when her knees began to buckle under the weight. They called her the strong one, as if that title didn't come with exhaustion, loneliness, and invisible scars. She was the safe space for others, and yet no one asked her if she had a place to land. She was the listener in every conversation, but when she grew quiet, no one asked why. She carried other people's secrets, their fears, their brokenness, and when she needed someone to carry hers, she found herself alone. Because when people grow comfortable with you being the anchor, they forget you might drift too. But this is the moment we stop overlooking her. This is the moment we choose to see what was never spoken, to feel what was buried behind her strength. This is the moment we realize that strength isn't the absence of struggle, it's the endurance of it. And no one has endured more quietly, more powerfully, more completely than her. She didn't just survive, she kept others from falling apart. She didn't just keep moving. She made sure everyone else had what they needed to keep going too. But now it's time for her to be seen. Not just for her strength, but for her scars. Not just for her giving, but for the emptiness it sometimes left behind. Because her story matters, her softness matters, her pain matters, the moments she almost gave up but didn't, they matter. The nights she cried in silence, the days she pushed through fatigue, the moments she smiled when she wanted to scream, all of it matters. She has earned the right to be more than the strong one. She has earned the right to break, to rest, to heal, and to be held. Let the world make room for her. Let us stop expecting strength without asking about the burden. Let us stop assuming silence means peace. Let us start listening with more than our ears, watching with more than our eyes, feeling with more than our own needs. Let her take off the armor. Let her breathe without expectation. Let her cry without shame. Let her be a woman, not just a warrior. She doesn't have to prove anything anymore. She never did. And maybe you recognize her. Maybe you are her. Maybe you've walked through life being everyone's shelter, everyone's answer, everyone's strength. Maybe you've felt invisible in your pain, silenced by the weight of being okay all the time. If so, let this be your reminder. You are seen. You are valued not for how much you give, but simply because you exist. You are allowed to rest. You are allowed to ask for help. You are allowed to not be the shield today, or tomorrow, or ever again if it's hurting you. This is for you, the woman who was everything for everyone else. You are not invisible anymore. We see you now.